look at ancient Greece and an era of its golden age, and afterwards the Hellenistic age. So the golden and Hellenistic age. Now in this part we're going to look at Greek art of the golden age. Now let's start with architecture. Post-war prosperity. Now that generates a boom in culture and arts. After the war, people are able to relax and generate culture and arts. They're feeling a lot more that they're able to do that. They have many different city-states. Each one was a city, and it's a state, almost its own country. So for Athens was a country. Sparta, it's a city and state. So these are city-states. And these wars come up, and afterwards, prosperity. There's culture and arts blooming. Now, an Acropolis was the center of the polis or city, and it was high up, like acrobatics, like a high city. The Acropolis was the center of the city and attracted being adorned by decorated stone and statuary. Now, here we have the Athens thing. You have a temple of Athena, right? Now, this temple of Athena has a statue, and it has an amphitheater on the other side, but it's built up on top of a mountain, like the city on a hill. Now, it gives a oversight to the populace below, but it's also an advantageous thing in case of warfare. Now, if you look at this now, here's the Acropolis, and then the Parthenon, famously sitting up there as well. Now, if you look, here's the Acropolis. There's an amphitheater in the Parthenon, and this would be the higher area, the plateau, where the Parthenon would be about there. That's where its amphitheater is. Now, in architecture of this, it had a 30-foot high bronze statue of Athena, a city-state protector goddess. Athena is associated with wisdom, and they had a lot of their philosophers was a love of wisdom. So Parthenon on the top of the Acropolis. Now, it was built in white marble. It started in 447 before Christ, or BC, and it took 15 years to finish. So since this is BC, if it took 15 years, this is a countdown to year zero. So 15 years later, you're looking at 432 BC is when it would be finished. Now, this 30-foot statue of Athena, the protector goddess, was right in the middle, and it was all near bump up to this ceiling here. The Parthenon has many elements that are sort of interesting. The Parthenon was 230 foot by 100 foot and 60 feet high, with its stone open-air pillars. Now, it was meant as a shrine more than a gathering place. So really, it's kind of a temple of Athena in a lot of ways. It's meant to be a shrine. Now, it becomes a gathering place because people were gathering in its front areas and discussing philosophies, and schools of philosophies developed. Schools meaning groups of people following a certain idea. School of thought comes from that. The triangular arches are adorned with storytelling sculptures that were actually brightly painted. Now, the other aspect of the Parthenon is that it was built optically. It doesn't really have these straight edges to its proscenium arch, or these straight pillars. It's meant to look like they have straight pillars. So someone from a distance looking at these pillars, it makes them look taller. And from a distance, the optical effect that would make this look bowed is compensated. So it's actually bowed up. So when you look at it from a distance, it's straight. And the same with the top. So the Parthenon, as it looks more or less today, that's some 2,500 years later. So it's built intentionally on a type of curve. So when you look at it, it has that arch. So it had two layers, or two fronts before the front door, and these had friezes, or had these stories. Now, a frieze is a panel, and they would just depict their stories, legends, and such. The Parthenon. Now, the Parthenon inspired many buildings in other lands and other eras. This is the U.S. Treasury building. Notice how Parthenon that looks. Now, painting. Painting was very important, but most of it did not survive. And we get a lot of the Greek painting. The Romans made copies of the Greek paintings, and that's where we get most of our ideas of where they came from. The Romans copied the Greeks in many things, and a lot of the Greek sculptures and paintings are actually Roman copies, and that's how we have them, or from literary descriptions. But most of the paintings from actual ancient Greece survive on the Greek vases. Alexander the Great, Pompeii Roman. Now to sculpture. A few actual Greek sculptures survived. Mostly were from Roman copies. Early Greek statues were visually very stiff and rigid poses. Here's something from 700 BC with a horse, Mycenaean, and a vase. They're very simpler than you'd imagine of what Greek sculptures were. Now, Alexander the Great, here's a sculpture. This is a Roman copy. Now, in this case, this sculpture was portraying this person. And from most ancient historians, this is the most accurate likeness of Alexander the Great. However, the Greeks were more into the ideal rather than the personalized portrayals. Here's something from 600 BC. Now notice how the early Greek has a very Egyptian look. And that's because they were very close across the Mediterranean from northern Africa, including Egypt. So their styles overlap. 530 BC, this is a kuros, a type of votive statuary. And they have this very just standing there pose, a very kind of rigid look. By 400s BC, the more natural poses start to come into play. And as an example, we have the sculptor Myron's discus thrower, easily recognizable Phidias' 40-foot statue of Zeus at the Temple of Olympia was one of the ancient wonders of the world. Here is Myron's Disagolis, or the discus thrower. Notice it has it looks like the athlete is turning and actually about to throw. It definitely looks a lot more natural as compared to the earlier ones. This is only 400, 450, so 50 years later they developed this natural look. 400 BC, so 400 BC is about 100 years after Aesop in Aesop's Fables. The nature of Greek art was influenced, reflected themselves in the world in 4 ways. Glorified human beings, because they were humanists. They looked at a lot of the human attributes and they looked for ideals of human attributes. If you consider their pantheon of gods, the Mount Olympus and Zeus and all those other characters, they have human characteristics attached to individual gods and goddesses, that they were depicting ideals and then also faults in those. So they were interested in idealizing human beings. They showed pride in their city-state. That's where they lived, a sense of place. Athena was the protector goddess of Athens. They expressed ideals of harmony, balance, order, and moderation. So here we have Aphrodite's, the Milo, and Ares. Now, the nature of Greek art expressed belief in combining beauty and usefulness. So here's an ideal: beauty and usefulness. Combining beauty and useful and good is a common Greek goal. Here's a statue of Victory. We'll end there with this one.